Good afternoon, everybody. I am Dr. Balosa, and I specialize in language, literacy, and culture. And I received my PhD in language, literacy, and culture from the University of Maryland, Baltimore County in 2020. I am actually teaching French in Philadelphia School District, and I am, at the moment, assigned to South Philadelphia High School, where I teach French 1, French 2, and French 3. And I am also the junior academy leader and also involved in the equity school member team. So today I want to discuss with you integrationism and the possibility of artistic creations, the case of the analysis of the poem Existential Unity. I'm going to start telling you about the presentation guideline. The first point we will be talking about objective of these studies, of this research, and we will be moving to research questions. Then what is the theoretical framework that will help us address these questions? What methodology? And what are the key terms that we need to return from this presentation? And then we're going to analyze the poem per se and conclude. In terms of objectives, these studies examine the way in which theories of integrationism and transformational interculturality influence the analysis of artistic creations and critical appreciation of individual creativity. So it also analyzes poetry as an artistic production and the significance of that creation in intellectual and critical voice in our modern communities. So by critical appreciation, I mean recognition of individual and collective artistic communication and giving it more humane attention as long as we see it as contributing to transforming entrenched, hegemonic, and discriminatory discourse. And how can we see those creativities as means to encourage action of mutual empowerment and equitable treatment that can lead all of us to peace, unity, diversity, and human dignity. Now, the question for this research are, what counts as art? Whose art counts in the world that is today intercultural, international? And what are the consequences of discriminatory treatment and product of certain art and certain producer in terms of the world that is today interconnected? So to address this question, I use this theoretical framework that I call integrationism and transformational interculturality. Integrationism is also called integration linguistics, which is a field founded by the Oxford University linguist Roy Harris. So Roy Harris defined integrationism as an approach in the theory of communication that emphasizes innovative participation by communicators within contexts It rejects rule-based models of language as the means or the only mean or the specific way of understanding languages or describing language. How about transformational interculturality? These expressions refer, or this theoretical approach refer to new mindset, new approaches, new discourse toward entrenched practice in terms of human relationship, intercultural relationship. How do you treat other community? How do you treat other human beings? How do you treat other people's ideologies? Is your way or no way, or everybody counts? And a negotiative mindset so that everybody's dignity is taken into consideration. So using this approach help this study use the analysis of the text, or you could call it rhetorical analysis. And in this specific case, I am analyzing a poem entitled Existential Unity. And before we move to the analysis of the text of the poem, we promised to look at the definition of the key term. The first term that we want to analyze is art. What is art? According to Roy Harris, art is a human activity consisting in one man consciously, by means of a certain external sign and their feelings and what he has lived through and that of what they have lived through, put together to influence feelings and experiences. And what about Artspeak? Then Harris also defined Artspeak as the way we talk about art, the form of discourse in which questions related to art are posed and debated within the social assumption concerning the value and the function of the art. And it is important that we understand that, because if we understand what discourse is around art, then we will also be able to handle issue, for example, in the United States today, when we have certain group of people destroying certain monument in certain neighborhood because they think that, well, this piece of art is associated with certain ideology. It may be in a colonial time, certain political practices. And what about those producers, those individual creativity that brought about this piece of art? What about the identity that this piece of art gave to the community? Should we just use the ideology as this sole mean to destroy them, or keep them, or should we have a negotiated mindset to analyze the meaning of those piece of items? And if we are promoting peace, unity, equity, is destroying them the solution? So those are the questions that this poem, this text, try to bring to our attention. Let's look at the first strophe of the poem. It reads, "To you, humiliation are tasteless, word of domination useless, people from all pole kindless, their policies worthless and mindless, their talk about peace pointless." What can we appreciate from this strophe? We look here at social and public policy involved in human affair, in nation, in organization, in school, in universities and institutions, who the social and public policy in place benefit. What counts as art in this society? Whose participation counts? And how does it affect individuals, communities, and our common humanity? Those questions, if addressed with equity, then everybody should find their part in that strophe, that reasoning. The second strophe reads, to you, the world glories crucify humility. Like under the boiling water, they terrify minority and individuality. Capital and local region testify. Communication and segregation in society signify. Integrationism as existentialism may notify individuals' creations to identify, not within discriminatory, identify, not with discriminatory humanity, but with human being. I will review this line again. The last one. Integrationism as existentialism may notify individuals' creation to identify not within discriminatory humanity, but within a human being. So, in this strophe here, we could wonder what role that intellectual discourse play in all this Artspeak business. Why can't we confirm that integrationism and existential sociolinguistics seems to present solution-oriented discourse? If you remember how we define integrationism, we say that an approach to communication that rejects that understanding of languages in isolation. Language has to be understood in context, and not just in the traditional definition of communication as the addresser and the addressee, but also looking in introspection, human beings sometimes as the producer of the language, or the consumer of the language. How he dreams about his language, how he manipulates the world around him, within himself. And that joins what the social existential linguistic or existential social linguistics is talking about. So we cannot separate language from a human being, because a human being exists through his or her language. And that's why when we have policies in place that don't value individual creativity, artistic creativity, is kind of rejecting the existence of that talent, that individual, that experience. And that's where intellectual discourse has to play a role, to bring the awareness that all talent matters, all creativity matters. And that's what I am calling a solution-oriented discourse. So the third strophe, to you, the discriminatory humanity has grown no trees, no spaces, no peace in community for all humanity to dignify. All is dry, no matter how much cry. It is right to write about it this night, no matter what might be the fight for me. So these tropes bring to our attention this kind of reasoning. How about the environmental issue? Which part of the world is appealing to life and which one is oppressed and condemned in human indignifying poverty and diseases? What are the consequences to our common humanity when we live in an environment that is segregated, when some part of the world is attractive and some part of the world bring fear for people even to visit. How much advocate on a transformational interculturality for a better existence of all can we notice today? What are the consequences that one or a group ideology may generate for the entire humanity? And before the last strophe, the fourth strophe says, who would call for an existential unity in modern circle of glories? Who would proclaim our common word of fraternity to pacify, to purify, to dignify? Who would teach peace to our birds, fish, and animals, our forests, our mountains, valleys, and hills, rivers, and seas? Who would communicate with peace to our children, to people of all races, all ages, to all cultures about the divine unity and diversity? What message can we draw from this strophe? So we could see that individual and collectivity responsibility matter. It is not what the other is doing, but what am I doing as well? It is not what the other group is doing, but what my group is doing as well. If that responsibility is shared, then there is a way we can promote that equity, that peace, that justice, that diversity. And again, within the transformational interculturality approach, we should not just question what the other are doing to maintain that unity, but what I am also doing to foster that unity. So that's what I'm talking about, individual responsibility. Sometimes we join a group because that's where we identify ourselves in terms of language, race, gender, social class. Okay, but how influential are we to see that group operate within unity and peace? The last strophe of the poem, strophe number 5. To you, when an existential unity will inhabit our mind and heart, curses and humiliation will leave the hands of the humiliators and will clean the mouths of the oppressors and the tormentors. Afresh, a dignified universal brotherhood will ring our doorbell and will disseminate messages of solidarity in our cell phone. Our individual creation and communication will see their elevation, and we shall all share hearts of unity, equity, diversity, and dignity. What message this last strophe saying? Consciousness of our common humanity, creativity, recreativity, good choice-making mindset, cultivation of a discourse of mutual intercultural awareness. We belong to one another. As we heard, afresh, a dignified universal brotherhood will ring our doorbells and will disseminate message of solidarity in our cell phone. Our individual creation and communication will see their elevation. Then we shall all share hearts of unity, equity, diversity, and dignity. So to conclude this presentation before I call the reader. I want to remind you, the audience, that unity within diversity as a human and societal existential reality cannot work alone or just by slogan, but it needs people to become aware of that reality. People to wonder what are their participation. As the Apostle Paul taught to the Christian of Romans in chapter 12, verse 18, if it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. So if all of us trying to do our best to live in peace with everyone, then we will contribute to an existential unity. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope this poem will also help you do your part, become involved as a builder, not a destroyer, as a brother, not an enemy, as a sister, as a friend, as a global intercultural citizen. Thank you. Now I'm going to call Miss Maureen. She's going to perform the reading of the poem. I give you Maureen.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Maureen Pratantoni, and as a community diversity and development advocate, I chose to read this poem as a way to promote tolerance of historical monuments and any artistic symbols that represent any individual or any given community independently of the ideology associated with artistic work. I strongly believe that destroying them is not only a sabotage of an individual artistic creation, but also a sabotage of a community, historical and cultural diversity, communication heritage. Existential Unity by Dr. David Balosa. To you, humiliations are tasteless. Words of domination, useless. People from all poles, kindless. Their policies, worthless and mindless. Their talk about peace, pointless. To you, the world glories, crucify humility. Like under the boiling water, they terrify minorities and individualities. Capital and local regions testify. Communication and segregation in society signify. Integrationism as existentialism may notify. Individuals' creations to identify. Not within discriminatory humanity, but within human dignity. To you, the discriminatory humanity has grown. No trees, no spaces, no peace in communities for all humanity to dignify. All is dry, no matter how much cry. It is right to write about it this night, no matter what might be the fight for might. Who would call for existential unity in modern circles of glories? Who would proclaim our common world of fraternity to pacify, to purify, to dignify? Who would teach peace to our birds, fish, and animals, our forests and mountains, valleys and hills, rivers and seas? Who would communicate with peace to our children, to the people of all races, all ages, to all cultures about the divine unity and diversity? To you, when existential unity will inhabit our minds and hearts, curses and humiliations will leave the hands of the humiliators and will clean the mouths of the oppressors and tormentors. Afresh, a dignified, universal brotherhood will ring our doorbells and will disseminate messages of solidarity in our cell phones. Our individual creations and communications will see their elevation. Then shall we all share hugs of unity, equity, diversity, and dignity. And that concludes our seminar. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Have a good night.
It's a bit fabulous.